Hello, W3 friends, Marvin here with a special episode in English for the first time in our podcast history because we talked to the co-founders of EtherMail, and EtherMail is here to change how we communicate by leveraging blockchain technology. It was an incredibly insightful conversation where we reflected on Gmail, Discord, and kind of like the Web2 communication stack, and then comparing that to what the future of it all in a Web3 environment could look like. So we talked about, creating user lists by segmenting them into NFTs that they hold, or just their blockchain activity. We talked about read to earn and how we as consumers might get paid just because we're reading certain emails, and just the future of how everything is evolving. It was a lot of fun, and I look forward to hearing your feedback on the episode, and see you on the other side. Cheers. So you guys are both in Barcelona right now, primarily?
Yes.
Main
Correct.
location. The company is also based in Barcelona?
Well, it's actually a Liechtenstein-based company, and we actually operationally we are here.
And where's this team set up? What does that look like? Is it spread all across the globe in the Web3 culture, or how does the setup look like?
Yeah, we're actually quite promoted.
Yeah, Venezuela, Argentina, Romania, Spain. What else do we have? There was one more, Honduras.
Germany.
Germany, of course, yes.
Romania,
yeah. So it's spread out.
Yeah, it's there's Spain, there's Liechtenstein. It's really spread out.
That's the spirit. And obviously, with such a remote setup and communication being digital, even more so, we scheduled our podcast through email. And I have to tell you, whenever I check my inbox, I get overwhelmed. I get almost anxious because there's so many unread emails. And it's just an ongoing struggle to keep up with it. I'm glad we actually made the podcast happen, even though we did it through email. But I'm curious, guys, is there a better way to do email?
Yeah, most definitely, we believe so. I mean, eventually, there's different ways of how we're trying to improve the landscape. So I'm going to cover a couple of those, then Shant's going to jump in and cover some other parts, basically. So, of course, the first one where we came from was actually the wallet-to-wallet connection. So in Web3, email is going to be very different compared to Web2, because obviously it's really connected to your digital identity and your wallet. And that's where we originally started from. And how can you really communicate between wallets with a traditional mechanism like email? And that is what actually EtherMail is doing. What you're referring to, Marvin, is actually a second part of it, where we believe that in the future, companies have to really honor your time and your data instead of just spamming you. So, which is today the case, and you've given your email probably to a couple of companies and the games or whatever, and now your email is just spread out over all these different channels and just get constantly bombarded with things. And some you like, and very often, probably 90% of it you don't like. So what we're introducing with EtherMail is a so-called pay-to-read concept, where actually people get rewarded for reading emails depending on, of course, their profiles. So the higher your profiles, the higher the connection also actually is, the higher in the future is going to be the payment for it. And that is something what step by step is going to evolve. Of course, it's not going to be there from tomorrow, but we believe that eventually it boils down to that companies have to reward people for their time, which essentially is the most valuable asset that everybody has.
That's a wild concept. And to everyone listening, also, welcome to w3.talk. Today is the first English edition. We got Gerald, Heidenreich, and Shant. Last name, you gotta help me with? Kovonian, co-founders of EtherMail, and today we're talking about the evolution of Web2 to Web3 email and some of the pain points I just mentioned and how EtherMail helps solve those pain points. Very excited to dive into this. Before we talk about EtherMail more so, Gerald, you already gave a quick intro. I'd be curious to hear just a quick background on both of you guys individually. It's also the first time we're doing 2 interview guests at once, so it'll be a fun challenge to get to navigate the conversation. But Shant, maybe give us a quick intro as to how you got into Web3, and maybe also what one project is that you're currently observing that's promising to you, aside from your own.
No, it sounds good. I mean, happy to do that. So, for Web3, actually, I've kept an eye on it for several years now. I didn't really get actively involved until Gary and I both sort of said, we really need to really do something there, right? But before that, I'm with my older brother. He was actually working on some decentralized exchanges 4 or 5 years ago or something like that, when the blockchain was still even more infant than it is now, and libraries had all sorts of problems. He was trying to build one 0x protocol back then, before Matcha existed, before Uniswap, etc. And then also he got involved in metaverses, and so I really had some ability to really experience the blockchain world through those lens, and advise on some other projects. And so, being a little more technical, I got my hands dirty, really started understanding the technologies and that nature, which was a lot of hard work, but also fun and rewarding, as we can all imagine. And in terms of projects, I mean, there is one that I'm not involved in any way, but I do really like, and I keep an eye on, which is the Golem network. With the Airbnb for computing power. I really like the concept for residual computing resources being put to use, and other people being able to earn from that. Mostly because it also opens up like a new type of cloud computing, which is more in the people's hands rather than necessarily in the let's say big tech hands, where it's Gmail cloud computing, Microsoft cloud computing, or Amazon, as we all know. So I think this is very interesting.
I appreciate the tip, and I know what I'll research first after this podcast. Golem Network. Shant, I just checked out your LinkedIn experience section again, and it just strikes me that you've been just involved in leadership technology roles for all of your career. And at some point, there was a shift into more and more Web3 keywords within the job descriptions. So I'd be curious to hear, was there like this one moment where you finally got it after experimenting, maybe after reading about it, like this one thing where you were like, okay, yeah, no, this is the future and this is here to stay?
I don't think it was one single moment. I think it's a gradual buildup. Also, seeing how the markets are reacting, how people are reacting to the technology. We all know that I think if it wasn't for things like MetaMask or applications like that, which also advanced and made it more usable on a phone or on the computer, we wouldn't be where we are today. And the problems we're trying to solve with EtherMail, for example, probably wouldn't have made much sense if not there wasn't an abundance of people using it for certain use cases. So I think it's just really about it's been keeping an eye on it on a slow flame for many years, and then at one moment said, it's potentially now a good time to get involved, because as you know, and many people have probably said, it's not just a trend anymore. It's not just something that's happening and is going to disappear. And so that probably is the nudge that sort of said, we really need to do something here.
And as a result of this, you started a company with Gerald, who is also with us on this podcast. And I would like to make the transition to you, Gerald, and hear about your entry into Web3 and maybe also a project you want to shill that you aren't personally a part of.
Okay, yeah. So I've been actually in Web 1, so I'm a bit older, so I've been in Web 1 and Web 2. In Web 2, we actually had a company where we sent actually every day 10 million emails. We eventually sold 2010 to Amazon. But there I really learned about how email can impact and how powerful it can be if it's done right. And then in 2015 or 16, I got actually the first time in contact with the whole Web3 blockchain world. There, actually, I didn't enter, and I kind of didn't go because the presentation I saw was just so crazy. There was a guy entering the room in a spacesuit, basically, shooting dollar bills at the audience. And I thought, okay, what the fuck is this? I love the performance, I have to say. It was brilliant. But I just didn't get it, yeah? And then as I was just simply too busy with other things and so on. But then gradually in 2018, I actually got involved with a project here in Barcelona, which was co-founded by actually Carlos Pujol, the former captain of the FC Barcelona team. And they were actually trying to make connections between fans and stars closer and use tokens for it. So eventually that concept evolved into something different, involving NFTs, and that was in 2021, actually, end of 21 more or less. Yeah, beginning of 21 actually. And then there was this one actually sparkling moment where they launched an NFT collection with Alvaro Morte, the professor from Monetize, and actually it was sold out within 48 seconds for a value of $1 million. And I thought, okay, this is just amazing how this world is reacting and behaving. And I really saw it that there was a big potential in this whole space because people were so enthusiastic about it. And of course, if you have a big enough number of people who really drive forward, and Shant already just mentioned that before, if you have a momentum going, and you're kind of going over this chasm thing, this gap thing, where something small becomes suddenly mainstream, or it's just the verge of it, then of course it is something which you can't stop anymore. And it became clear to me at that moment, it's clear you will not be able to stop this anymore, regardless of what regulations and so on will do. It will just become normal in everyday's lives as Web 2 is. And the second part, I think, and I'm going to stop, is I also realize it's not really only about blockchain technologies. It's everything what means Web 3 and also the notion of what it means, meaning decentralized data ownership and also a completely new monetary system, obviously, where all of a sudden you have those microeconomies, let's say, which are between companies and their audiences. And there's this money or coin flow, however you call it. And I think this is just giving so much power to a new development that this can't be neglected. And every company in the next 10 years will have blockchain or token or whatever elements in their business.
I'm sold. I'm all in Web3, even more so now.
Yeah.
I'm a big Barcelona fan. I used to be heavy into football or soccer, as our American fans would call it. Yeah. Lost a bit of touch since the entrepreneur stuff took over, but I watched it from a distance. So this Puyol anecdote is very interesting to you. I had no idea this happened. And maybe for context to the listeners, you said Money Heist. You mean the Netflix hit piece, that
Correct,
show?
Exactly.
And so the actor that played the professor, they launched an NFT, and that sold out within 48 seconds.
Exactly, yeah. So they sold 2,000 NFTs basically. The first tranche was in 48 seconds it was sold out. And the concept basically was actually to kind of participate and let people participate in the whole way of how movies are produced. And very interesting also, and that was also the point where Shant and me became aware of how difficult actually communication in Web3 is. So you have typically when you launch a project, you have these two phases or these three phases, let's say. So in phase one, you have to, of course, inform and get your community up and going. As of today, you very often use Telegram and Discord and so on. So you have to create the community. But then what happens very often is that people just mute those channels because there's just too much stuff happening, let's say there. Then during the sale, actually, you have to, of course, communicate now. It's live. And you have to access people's information about the wallet, so who is really allowed, who's not allowed, and so on. And then number three, post-sale, you have to do that post-sale communication, which again is based on token. So because if you, Marvin, has bought an NFT or a token from me, I want to communicate with you in the future. But the problem is if I can't reach you because, well, I just don't have an email from you, or you might have sold, by the way, the token to Shant in between. I just don't know anymore who the owner of my token is. So that's where EtherMail was born, and saying, how can we ensure that there's always an updated, let's say, identity or way of how to reach a token holder, and meaning that you synchronize basically everything what's happening on the blockchain, in the wallets, in the smart contracts, of course, and then basically are able to exactly target the owner of the individual token at the moment from a company perspective. And that is why EtherMail is a combination of an end-user solution, which is the ethermail.io mail address, and at the same time a B2B solution like MailChimp is for large corporations to connect with their audiences.
That makes so much sense. I mean, I read through the website, but the way you just communicated it, I can grasp it now. And I mean, I can talk from my own experience, just browsing through the Discords. It's overwhelming, and I tend to just mute, like you said, most channels.
Yeah.
And from a brand's perspective, if we bring out an NFT, I just rely on the fact that people still somehow read my Discord messages, right? But having a direct communication channel to your NFT holders, I mean, it's crucial. How else are you going to ensure that you stay up to date and that you're actually able to communicate the value you're delivering through whatever use cases you're implementing? That makes a lot of sense. So the way I'm understanding then also, it doesn't necessarily completely replace Gmail, but it's more so a communication tool for projects / B2B companies reaching their customers. But Gmail as like the more broad communication tool will still coexist, or how would you say the Web3 email compares to the Web3 email use case?
If you don't mind, I'll take this one. So I think they can coexist to a certain degree, but it's really ultimately going to be a decision upon each individual user, how they want to use the tools that are given to them and how they perceive things, right? So for example, right now, as of today, we do have a way that you could theoretically hook up your EtherMail account into your Gmail app. It's not, and at least you're using the same application, so you don't have to use other applications. But it's just another inbox, you could say, right? It's another account hooked up, and you could be doing that. And that's something that of course is very practical for users. Whether you're signing up to newsletters, let's say on Web2 companies, from your favorite news outlet, you could start migrating some of your newsletters over, instead of using it from Gmail, into EtherMail, and then you have the read to earn model, which is an incentivization for you to sort of do that, whereas Google doesn't, or any other company, that maybe Hotmail, Yahoo, etc., wouldn't sort of give you that incentive. So they can of course coexist. And the question also becomes, do you want to use it in an anonymous format, or do you want to be revealing who you are, etc.? So Gmail, Hotmail, and all the other ones are established with identities that are normally, your first name, last name, or something of that nature, and people usually communicate with that. But in an anonymous world, you have a choice if you want to remain just with your public Web3 address, or you want to associate it with something more identifiable. And so that would be possible as well. And the question here, is each user will sort of decide what they want, but it's not just a B2B or B2C type of business, because communication ultimately is how people use it. And so someone can sort of just say, look, I want to try and encourage someone to sell maybe an NFT that hasn't listed it anywhere. Well, if I can get in touch with them, it's more a C2C than it is a B2B or B2C, right? And so, yeah, the possibilities really are limitless, and it's just a matter of how the person individually is going to decide how to use it. And that's pretty much how we see it. Of course, we're probably focusing at first a B2C approach, but it does not exclude any of the other possibilities with that regard, because we do know that people do want to get latest information on the assets that they own, and Telegram and Discord unfortunately have not lived up to that type of expectation to get quality news in an intimate manner, due to the volume and loads of messages that people do, and as you mentioned, become overwhelmed. And with email, of course, being rich text and visual, and you can do a lot more with that.
Important, perhaps, Marvin, is also it's just going to be on your phone. Like you see here, it's just my EtherMail client basically, and it just takes regularly all the information, and it's just a normal email what I receive eventually. So you can even basically say the Gmail, or your normal Gmail, takes the POP or the IMAP basically and gets into the Gmail account. So you don't have to have any different more systems basically.
Got it. So for everyone who's just listening to this and not watching the video, Gerald just showed me just a regular looking email inbox segmented into different addresses. And so you could consolidate your maybe Gmail, that would be my next question, your ENS domain, or how do we actually communicate in Web3? What's the address I type in to actually send my message?
Yes.
At this moment, so you can just use your public wallet address, so just your wallet address at ethermail.io, and that is the default account setup and configuration. At this moment, we are exploring possibilities for an ENS or other type of aliasing type of solution. We are, of course, looking at that very much. As you mentioned, sometimes it is more practical to be able to fill out something like that.
So for now, we're just using the number salad of my Ethereum wallet to communicate.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, you just connect with your wallet really on the EtherMail website, and then that's it. And I mean, okay, if you want to give it in a cafe to somebody or to a girl, that could be a bit difficult, because it's going to take you 5 minutes to write that down probably. But actually, shared the other day on delivery service that she did it and they get it. So, but of course, we'll also offer aliases and so on. But that's going to be step by step.
Amazing. Okay, so maybe also to to conclude almost this comparison between Web 2 and Web 3, could you, maybe you, Gerald, in this case, compare an old tool and then say how this would be solved with EtherMail in Web 3? So let's say we got Gmail. What does the EtherMail equivalent look like? We have Discord, we have ConvertKit and MailChimp. Could you just give like 3 or 4 examples of Web 2 and then how you solve that with Web 3 and EtherMail?
Mm-hmm. So two things. So the one is EtherMail really is a normal email, right? So you can, as in Web 2, in Web 3 actually, send a very normal email with rich text or video or whatever to that email address. The big difference is, of course, that in the Web 3 world, let's say, the mailing list is automatically updated in the backend. So in the old days when we were using, well, not the old days, but I mean in previous companies, you have the MailChimp, and then you have just all the email addresses in there, and they would just stay there. Whatever Shant, for example, or you, Marvin, would do with your email, they would just be there. At one stage, you, Shant, or Marvin, would just say, fine, I'm no longer interested, basically, with it. Now, of course, with Web3 or with EtherMail is those email addresses will get automatically updated with activity on the blockchain because it's connected with the wallet, what you have. Of course, the blockchain is tracking everything what's happening with your wallet. So which token do you buy? Which conference do you go to? In the future, which asset do you buy? Which book do you buy? Or whatever you want to, because that's going to happen in the future. And automatically that wallet, what you have, is updated with that information, making that wallet address and the information about you richer and richer and richer. So that means that automatically then, for example, I could auto-create subsegments within my backend system as a company, because I know, okay, fine, Marvin and Shant, for example, they both have a token now. They're in that same group. Well, then the next thing is I know that, for example, Marvin just bought, I don't know, a new microphone or something. So Marvin would also be a different segment and saying, well, Marvin is also a buyer of a microphone, but he's also interested in tokens, for example. The next information is I know that Marvin has in his account, I don't know, 1 billion Ether, yeah. So and Shant has only 500 million Ether or 500,000 Ether. I know that Marvin is for me even more interesting than Shant to sell that big yacht. Just make something up right now, of course. But basically, that all that updating on the information is a super important information, piece of information, and that is, I think, a super critical key that you have automatically updated back-end email lists and segments depending on activity happening on the blockchain without anybody having to do anything. That's number one example. Number 2 example, in Web 2, I would send you an email and say, listen, here is an offer for, I don't know, a book or a song or something. You would click on the link, you would go to a website, you go through a checkout process, you step that up. You have like 5 or 6 or 7 different steps where you eventually end up in hopefully buying something. And likelihood that you don't go from step 1 to 2, 3, 4, 6 to 7 is probably very high. In the future, what's going to happen is you're going to receive that EtherMail inbox basically, and you're going to receive that email saying, listen, Marvin, are you interested to buy this token or this digital song or whatever? Easier with digital because you don't have to deliver information, but that could also work with physical. And you're just going to say, yes, I want to do it. There's a pop-up with your wallet, you sign, and it's done. Yeah. So that whole conversion mechanism and how purchases and e-commerce is going to be transacted in the future is going to completely change.
I mean, just thinking about the fact that I can segment user lists based on the tokens and whatever they do on the blockchain sounds too good to be true almost. Yes. I guess the prerequisite is that you actually have to have your assets as tokens or reflected on the blockchain, which now it makes even more sense to say, okay, why should I have an NFT that resembles this microphone? Yes. Well, to also have transparency on the blockchain and be able to interact yes. and communicate better, not just as a seller or vendor, but also as a consumer.
Completely agree. Exactly. I mean, this will happen, right? You will have those token for your digital for your physical goods. I mean, there's companies like Oli and Anna. She's also here in Barcelona. They already are working on that. You have your receipt, and then by the already with the receipt, you have an equivalent track record on the blockchain. And I might have bought that phone and automatically installed the blockchain that I own this phone now. Yeah? So this is going to happen for sure.
Okay, I have to ask because I heard it twice now, read to earn. Can you please walk us through what the heck read to earn really means and how, like, because we saw these examples with Steppen and Axie Infinity, and we saw those hype loops where you have that monetary incentive to engage with an application, and all of a sudden the incentive isn't as attractive anymore, and thus the engagement also decreases drastically. And so the economic side of things is always what it seems like the biggest challenge for those projects. And now I hear that I will get paid to open emails and read content, consume content. I love content. Can you explain how I can make money with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's sort of very similar to like the Brave Attention token, right? The way we sort of see that reading an email, it's very different to, let's say, gaming and all these other things where, sometimes there's a barrier to entry because you have to own this NFT in order to start gaming, etc. Here, there's no barrier to entry. You can just start using an account, right? So that, let's say, the starting point is already very different. And the second thing that happens is actually, as the Brave Attention token, this is similar in the email space, because in the end, when you have a lot of emails and you have to sit down and you start reading through them, even if it's for 30 seconds or 50 seconds or whatever it might be, a minute, 2 minutes, it is basically an exchange of your time, because that's what they're taking up, right? Someone is taking up your time. So then there should be some sort of incentive and a fair trade, because otherwise what happens is your inbox stays filled with spam. And so how do you differentiate what is important, what is not important? And especially when it comes down to, let's say, sort of newsletters or advertisements or things like that, this is quite... It can absorb a lot of your time. You could probably just spend all day reading emails if you, even in the Web 2 world, and you would never get through it, right? So the return model really looks to sort of do that the same as the Brave Attention token, in that there's, let's say, a mechanism for advertising, but there's a wealth redistribution, as there is the alignment of B2C companies, and it sort of acts as a wealth distribution mechanism, right? Instead of just big tech takes it all. That's not the idea, right? Additionally, there is also going to be this configurable paywall, which is one of our core features and core pillars that we're going to be launching. And ideally there you can configure things such as interests. So, you might say, oh, my wife is very much interested in makeup, or I'm interested in technology and gadgets or video games or whatever it is. And you can sort of maybe categorize a little bit the things you're interested in. And additionally say how frequently you would like to receive that type of information, so that you don't get saturated or overwhelmed, rather than, I signed up here and there and there and there and there, and all of a sudden now I don't know what to do because I'm just getting so much email, right? So it will be configurable in that regard, and that will already sort of reduce that sort of load. And the interesting thing about what we call the paywall, right, is that it very much also acts as an anti-spam mechanism, because if you go back into like the traditional world and typical spam, they sort of just email blast absolutely everyone in the world and sort of say, well, someone's going to read it, and then they just send out thousands of emails and it ends up in either junk or inbox, and then you just delete and all of this. But if someone has to, in order to do that, sort of be a little more reserved, because they know they have to fork something out, right? They have to maybe pay these EMCs or EMTs or gas fees, whatever it is, right? It becomes a deterrent, because they're like, well, I actually need to go for quality, not quantity. And that changes the whole way that, let's say, the other side, the marketers or whatever, operate. It changes the whole dynamic. And in order for it to exchange to create an exchange for the invasion of the personal inbox.
There's, just to add on this, I think there is, for sure, the understanding that you're not going to become a millionaire by reading emails. Yeah. And of course, that is something where this concept for being rewarded for reading has been around for a while. So I think there's two important parts. The one, of course, is, I think what Shant also already mentioned, is you're going to have different value of people. So people who are more valuable, whose time is more valuable, are going to be rewarded probably more than people who eventually don't have that high value, let's say, to a marketeer. And that, again, will be automatically updated, because the more you buy, of course, the higher your value, because the advertisement industry knows that, well, Marvin is a big buyer, whereas Shant is actually not such a big buyer. So that means that your value will go up step by step. And that actually will then make it more justice, let's say, or more fair to everybody. We believe, and that's a discussion we're actually having also, is there's going to be a probability or potential of some hype, some significant hype at one point, because of course you get EMC and there's a conversion into EMT, and then people start speculating and so on. It can go like this. This is why we're really looking into this, how to make sure that this is like a long-term sustainable model. But then there is another one also, just adding to this, is really to reward people to get into access with somebody. Imagine you want to get into contact with Warren Buffett from Berkshire Hathaway, right? He might say, listen, you can send me an email. I'm going to read that email. So here would be really, I read it, and he would say, okay, fine. If you give me, I don't know, 50,000 EMC or something, or whatever we eventually find, I'm going to read it. And perhaps I give this to charity, for example. So there is this value again of people who are really difficult. And that's also something as an interesting concept, we believe, where you can really monetize also, again, perhaps your fame. Again, it goes back to people. We have similar things in other areas already.
Very interesting. I mean, so right now the barrier you could set as a consumer, let's say Warren Buffett, would be the monetary barrier. Could you also even set standards as to maybe the brand hitting some token standards, or like, let's say they have to own this microphone, they have to have this soulbound token at some point that proves that they did hard work, just like some prerequisites like that?
100%. Yeah. That is something what Shant is always saying also. Eventually, it's the maturity and the value of somebody sending. And again, the more valuable you are and the more trustworthy you are as a source, then eventually it's going to be more likely it's going to be delivered and also be accepted by the users. So we believe that it has a big opportunity to reduce spam and all this. I don't know from where all these guys are coming from, but like massive amounts of spamming happening around the globe. And it's a big opportunity for this industry.
So from a consumer standpoint, this read to earn model makes a lot of sense. I get less spam. I can even set up a paywall and put in certain criteria monetarily, or even, let's say, tokens, NFTs that they have to hold. And I can even get paid for that. Now, from a brand's perspective, is the other side of the equation that, well, you get more segmented user lists, you get direct communication tools, so you're almost willing to sacrifice or pay for that and give the consumer more power in that regard?
Yeah.
Or is there also upside for the brand or / the vendor when it comes to the read to earn model?
So there is, of course, benefits to both sides, right? The first thing is that if they were, let's say, on a traditional Web 2.0, let's say, solution, they usually accumulate very large email lists that then they just sort of, again, they send it out to everybody, and it's just like, well, since it's already included in my monthly pricing or whatever, I'm just going to do all of this, but it's kind of a shot in the dark. Again, though, that is only very much focused on their own list, right? The question is then, how do I get to new people and new users and new interests? How do I communicate directly with them? Typically, if we look at marketing, well, then they have to do some campaign, they have to go and leave an email address, they have to do this and that and that. However, here with the paywall, you can pre-configure all of that, and it actually gives brands a new way to reach the new quality users. Because on one side, they've given already their consent saying, look, I'm interested in this type of category. So imagine, one company says, look, I'm selling these types of shoes. And then another company's like, well, I sell these other types of shoes they might be interested in. How do I get in touch with them? Well, the people have already said, I'm interested in these shoes. I'm willing to receive an email once a month or twice a month from some new company or something like that. And then they now have access to a new client base with consent. Whereas in the traditional world, they would have had to go through online marketing, do this advertisement, do that, do this and that, and then finally get an email. And now I can send the email, which changes the entire flow, right? So on that side, first is on how do I get in touch with new people? It's already a huge benefit. The second one is, as Gary mentioned actually earlier on, was how the Web3 email experience will change over time, where you can just buy directly in the email. So for companies, that's already huge, because if, as we know, each step in a funnel leads to drop-offs, either because of user experience, load times, because, my kid just walked in and interrupted me and now I'm no longer interested, whatever it might be. And that type of experience will increase the conversion rates as to be expected, because there's less steps. So again, it's another added value for the companies in that regard. So it really is about matching the interests of both sides and going for a more qualitative and more enjoyable experience on both sides than it is about just blindly trying to just get to the people that I need to, and through a billion different ways.
Got it. Now, this all sounds very compelling in theory, and I am excited about this actually becoming big and becoming a user. But where are we at in the roadmap? What's the current state at EtherMail? Do you already have active users, and what's ahead of you guys?
Yeah, so we launched officially 4 weeks ago. Actually, exactly today, 4 weeks ago. So we are a bit cautious at the moment with users because we are very straightforward flooded. So we have hundreds, thousands of users who have already registered with EtherMail. So this is not anymore a pet and an idea what Shant and we had, and we hope that somebody's going to pop by and and sign up. So it's literally massive, like 6-digit amounts of people signing up and 5-digit amount of people every day, basically. And on the other side, also, we have a number of companies actually with whom we have started to talk with. And we're talking about Fortune 500 companies here who actually have exactly those problems. Car manufacturers who want to get in touch with or want to drop NFTs, for example, and how to get in touch with these things. Luxury brands who actually have certain products, what they are selling, and then say, listen, we'd like to get actually in touch with our people who have bought this product, for example, and drop the NFT. And of course, on the Web3 world, also an NFT project, some of the biggest NFT projects we're already speaking to because they have all that problem. So we're very excited at the moment, and we're growing like crazy and move forward as fast as possible because we know it's a unique opportunity. It's technologically quite complex what actually Shant and the whole team has built there, of course. So we know it's not going to be easy to copy, but we also understand, of course, that there's going to be more players in this market. So this is why we just go as fast as possible and make this really the leading player and the standard, the Gmail for Web3, that's for sure.
What has been the most important, if any, one thing or multiple things to actually grow the awareness and get that initial user base? Because we see a lot of Web3 projects struggling with just the initial onboarding. Was there anything that helped you guys get that traction so quickly?
It's a little bit the secret sauce, Marvin. So I'm sorry, but that is probably one of the questions we wouldn't necessarily would like to answer. I understand your curiosity, but this is one of those things where we believe we really have a unique competitive advantage of also what we've done the last 10 years, basically, on learning certain things and developing certain technologies, which make it quite unique. And this is, we believe, also why that growth has been so stellar.
Well, it was worth a shot.
Yeah.
I'll touch base once you guys are a unicorn, and then maybe you can spill some more
Yes, for sure.
gold nuggets on that. So I'm curious. I mean, we talked about the benefits for both sides of the user experience, but how do you guys actually grow the business? What's the business case for EtherMail? How do you monetize, and maybe also how much do we rely on your platform? Given that we're talking about this Web3 decentralized approach, right? And we had this controversy with OpenSea, but it's a centralized company. Is this really Web3? So, yeah, what's the business case, and how much do we rely on the platform?
Shant, you want to take the centralized, decentralized, and I take the business case?
I think that makes sense. I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
Go for it.
That's why you're such a good co-founder match here.
Yeah, like match exactly. So the business case side, it's really look at it as a marketplace. So of course, on the one hand, you have the companies, and the companies essentially will have. At the moment, we're really just pushing it for free, but in the future, people have to just pay a subscription, very similar to what Mailchimp is doing. And then, of course, it's going to be a mailing solution, meaning advertisement revenues. And on the user side, the basic version is for free, and then there's going to be additional premium features and benefits and so on, what people can basically acquire and or pay with EMC.
So on the centralized and decentralized, right? It's a good question, right? And of course, I think there are DApps and there are truly decentralized applications. There are hybrids, and then there are solutions which are centralized, which cater to a Web3 audience. They don't all have, I don't believe that everything in the world needs to, let's say, be decentralized in that manner. In EtherMail, we are first starting off very much with the redistribution of wealth, and from the advertisement, from the attention span, from all of those things. We're also very much open to, as you mentioned before, integrating those domain aliasing. We have it in consideration in the spirit of Web3 and all of these things. Those are open protocols as well. In terms of the data usage on the blockchain, storing actually encryption keys on the blockchain, which can only be accessed by the user, et cetera, right? So there is a lot going on in that decentralized aspect, but we have to actually tackle it down into steps. Ultimately, with a vision where it can potentially be completely decentralized, but starting the other way would potentially make it so that we can't solve communication today if we're solving the decentralization today. So, because it's a very difficult subject. Questions come up with all the time, okay, so if I was to use something that is more or less immutable and is permanently there, like on the blockchain. Imagine I store my emails, and all of a sudden, I don't know, someone for some reason who got access to your wallet, and then you're like, well, I don't want them seeing my emails. How do I delete it now? Well, it's permanently there. Or someone somehow identified your wallet key and then saw all your emails and said, look, all of their emails are on the blockchain in this permanently decentralized storage, but they can see all of it transparently. That would be a sort of situation where you want to be able to delete it, but because it's immutable, you would be stuck in that, right? And that's not a very good situation. On the other hand, there are some solutions out there that's promise and in between. They say, well, if it's not accessed frequently, we sort of delete it, but if it's accessed frequently, it's sort of permanent. Now, can you imagine people sort of saying, I can't find my email because I didn't access it like 3 years in 3 years, and it was, I don't know, some notary item or something, and you're like, how could I have lost this? And so juggling that permanency or that temporary sort of aspect in a decentralized way is very, very difficult. It's not an easy question to be solved. So we believe we can solve this one later on, but we want to solve communication today. But very much again open in the Web3 spirit of trying to decentralize this a lot more. In starting off with encryption keys that can only be accessed by the decentralized users, supporting decentralized communication, redistribution of the wealth as mentioned before, and just keep building up on all of that. That is very much what we're looking at.
So I'm going to take this as I'm going to be also the one going to the conference. So on the importance of it, I think it's a brilliant idea to connect the Web 2 and the Web 3 world. Demexco is one of the biggest marketing conferences in Germany, also Central Europe, actually, as a matter of fact. And I believe that it's really time to connect these two worlds, the Web 3 and the Web 2 world, because they are no longer separated. I mean, before people thought, okay, it's the Web 3 and then the Web 2. But for sure now, you also see it, for example, with stocks going up and down, and actually the cryptocurrency is doing a very similar model. It's very simply because there's just so many Web2 companies in there from now who are actually investing into Web3 spaces, basically. So it's a very normal thing that these two worlds are moving much closer together than they were in the past. And that's, I think, why it's a great idea to have this conference and specifically have a set of Web3 companies for companies really to understand what's happening on there. And it's step by step. When I first started, we had a meeting with somebody yesterday who was like, well, the first conference, I just didn't understand a thing what these guys were talking about. trust me, it was the same for me a couple of years back. I was like, what is this all about? I mean, luckily, Shant is always there to help me out. Like, okay, yesterday, for example, good point there, Marvin. So I got the NFT dropped from the conference, right? So brilliant. It was on Polygon. Great. Okay, so I got the Polygon, the MetaMask. Now that I finally got, but then it was an ERC1155 token, I think, which was then again not really there. So Shant had to help me actually to pick this up. So that shows, okay, how you have to really make it much easier in the future, and that's the objective: how to get there. On the conference itself, some of the things we discussed about today. So, what is Web 2? What's Web 3? How can we move communication from Web 2 and into the Web 3 world? What advantages are going to be there? So, I'm really curious to see also how the audience is, and looking forward to meeting everybody there in person. And I think person events will stay. They become even more important, of course, with all that hybrid. But at the same time, hey, I mean, that podcast, we couldn't have done it in like 10 years ago. We just would not have happened, right? So the combination of the mixture between the two is a great thing.
Love that. And we could talk much more about the transition of Web 2 to Web 3 and even how you guys see maybe the development of it all over the next 10 to 20 years. But we have a time cap. So what I would like to do is to wrap things up with just 5 quick questions. We call it the rapid fire wrap up. And you can just answer with whatever comes to mind first, just straight out of the gut, and no right or wrong answers.
Yeah.
So to our beloved editor, some sound effect would be cool now to increase the tension here. Yeah. And we'll start, and you can just go back to back. We'll start with you, Shant. Which project or trend in the Web3 space is overrated and why?
For me, it's actually the play to earn. The reason is I'm a gamer and an entrepreneur, and I have a hard time seeing really what the two things are, because I don't like conflating the entertainment with being incentivized to earn money. I want entertainment for the joy, not for the money. So that's for me a very personal thing as a gamer.
So you were part of the anti-Discord Web3 Connect movement back in the day.
I was busy sending EtherMails.
You've been past Discord for a long time.
Exactly, like it's old.
Maybe.
It's old.
But one quick follow-up, Shant, I have to ask, what's your favorite game right now? What are you playing?
Right now, I'm actually playing Diablo 2 Resurrected on the PlayStation 4. But before that, it was pretty much the Last of Us Part 2. So the Last of Us 2. And I mean, I play all sorts of games, real-time strategy, some FPS, some, RPGs, a little bit of everything. As long as right now I don't have to play online, because that is very intense and consumes a lot of time, because I'm also very competitive in that regard, then right now I'm sticking to single player games.
It's just more peace of mind.
Exactly.
Nice. Gerald, which project or trend in Web3 is overrated?
I think it's, for me, clearly the metaverse at this moment, because if you start actually entering the metaverse and are really going around in there, you think, oh, this is a really shitty part of my language experience, just simply because the browser can't just handle what's on there. And I think we're just also missing the hardware to really enter this. And by the way, I think this is something in Web3 we're going to see mass adoption once the hardware is out there. The real glass or whatever, which is then like super easy, or like the lens or something like this, then I think we're going to see mass adoption. At the moment, I think it's just overrated. I'm not saying that people in companies shouldn't be there. I think, yes, they should, but it's very overrated. So expect long return on investments until something comes back.
Nice one. We got some good takes today. I like this. Let's move on to the next one. Besides EtherMail, what is your favorite communication tool, Shant?
Mine, there's 2 that I use, one for personal and one for business. So for personal, I use I use them both on the computer. I use Friends, which actually allows me to connect, let's say, my Telegram, my WhatsApp, and have a bunch of different chat applications. So being able to communicate across all these different communication channels really isn't so much of an inconvenience. It makes it quite user friendly. And then for business, I think it's Mattermost, which is kind of like a Slack but open source. And I think that one is nice because you have, let's say, your boards, you can create your channels and everything, and for operations purposes, it's actually quite useful.
How do you spell the personal one?
Franz, Franz.
Franz.
Franz. Yeah.
Franz. Okay, yeah, Gerald. My German my German friend here comes in for the saving. Amazing, Gerald. What's your favorite communication tool stack?
Very similar to Shant, actually, because of course we are eventually the same company, so the communication is happening exactly on MetaMost for sure. Franz, I haven't really got into it yet, but I have also to admit that I'm still a lot on email, so this is still a tool which I very often use. But of course now more and more, of course, also on EtherMail. But again, the beauty is the one doesn't exclude the other. It just all runs into my inbox, and it just helps me to stay organized because I have so much communication coming in, like Telegram and WhatsApp and Discord and whatever. And I always say, okay, fine. There's a lot of noise for me happening on Telegram and WhatsApp and Discord, but then the important stuff is for me still happening on email. Because people, and I think it's an important thing, is it's like the email is the replica of the letter, right, in the old days. And that is something where you have to sit down, you have to type, you don't want to make like really stupid typing errors in there and so on. So people have to first think before they send. Whereas on Discord, Telegram, and WhatsApp, it's just very often just noise. I mean, just text, or even worse now, people just say something in it. Yeah, I say, okay, if you send me a text speech message, call me. what's the point? Because I'm going to sit in a meeting and then I'm going to listen to that text message. I think every tool has their right way of usage, and you should just stick to that one. They have all their place to stay for sure.
So true. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Email is like the letter. You have to put a little bit of extra thought into it. Okay, next one. Your favorite podcast / source of information, Shant?
For me, being sort of a sciencey, techie type of person, I think I combine quite a few things. Traditional news, of course, but word of mouth, Dig and Reddit, I think, are the other two that I really like. So Dig has great highlights of things that are happening. Yes, there are some memes, there are some science stuff, there's some educational stuff. It covers like the top things of many different categories, and then Reddit, as you can imagine, is kind of a rabbit hole that you can see a lot of things. But if you subscribe to the right channels and communities, I think you can get a lot of valuable information and news in every regard.
Oh, so you must be Kevin Rose enthusiast then with the Dig. I didn't even know people still use Dig. I mean, it's a bit before my days. Is there one channel, because you mentioned how important it is to subscribe to the right channels, is there one specific channel you would recommend our listeners to check out?
I think for me, if out of all of those, I think it's really just Dig. I think it does a very good job at what it does is, it's not a constant feed of new information, which means you can go in there once or twice a day and really be caught up with a lot of things. It doesn't mean that they're 2-second articles. No, I mean, some of it might be a little longer, some of it might be, but it's very interesting. And once you've done it, whether it's in the morning or the evening, you don't have to worry about, am I missing something else on something else? You'll get to it tomorrow, and it's not that endless loop of dopamine hits and more and more and more. So I think that's a very, very good one.
Cool. Gerald, what's your favorite source of information? Maybe also if you have a specific creator or show in mind, that could be maybe interesting for the listeners too, if there's anything you watch or listen to or read.
Yeah, so I have a very different perspective on this actually. So I don't read a daily newspaper. I don't read daily news. I don't watch TV. I just don't do all these things because, again, for me, it's too much noise. And the really important things, A, get lost, and B, I just simply don't have the time to it. So what my sources are is I have a weekly newspaper that I actually read. I have some emails that I again get basically as summaries, and then actually it's smart people around me like Shant and others who essentially bring me those things because it's like a filter if you think about it, right? I mean, newspapers in the old days also used to be again a filter. Somebody first thinks about what to put to whom. Now there's so much noise, it's just impossible to understand what's important, what's not important. So I think there's no information overload and the knowledge underload, and I think it's important to distract very often from it and say, okay, guys, not for me. Let's just first think instead of just consume more and more.
Love that. Is there one newsletter you could share with us that we might want to check out?
I have a couple of newsletters on Web3. So there's a company called Collective Shift from actually Australia. I think they're doing quite a good job. It goes a bit deeper actually than the typical thing, and I like it. And it's actually a fellow from Entrepreneurs Organization who's doing it. That's why I actually subscribed to it.
Awesome. Appreciate this little nugget. Last question. One Twitter account can also be another social media platform, if any, to follow, to stay up to date, or just to get interesting content from. Shant.
I mean, this one's gonna probably sound weird, but I'm actually not a Twitter user.
LinkedIn? Really do you use any other? Are you on any social platform? YouTube? Anything?
No.
Zero.
It's been years since I've used them. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I might have some accounts just laying around, but it's not something I've been using in the last 3 or 4 years actively, unless we consider Reddit a social media, which in a way it is a forum or a social media. But yeah.
If I was a competitor of you guys, that's when I'm like, shit, I'm scared. This is serious. They're not even following any social media accounts. Gerald, what about you? Are you following anyone?
Same thing. I don't. I use LinkedIn. I think that is a good source. I mean, I have a big network on LinkedIn. So over the years, I've thousands of people in there, and I think again, it's a human filter of important things, and that is for me a great way and a great inspiration always to see what people are doing there, because that's I think where you can learn. You can learn from people very often who you also know somehow and have a relationship. So that's for me, that's the main source I use.
Love that. We're a big LinkedIn enthusiasts here. So
really good.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, I'll end it with a quote that I read somewhere, and it goes something like, "I can only show you the door. You're the one that has to walk through it." Maybe to sum up this conversation, guys, what does this quote mean to you? And then how do we best get in touch and learn more about what you do?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's actually the model we put on our Barcelona Blockchain Network website. It's the incubator and venture studio, what Shant and we have on the side, where we do some investments and so on. And I mean, we strongly believe it's about opening people's minds and eyes towards Web3, and it's the red pill or it's the blue pill, basically, what you can take. And we can show you the door, but you have to gonna be able to walk through it and make your own experiences. You have to create the wallet. You have to start trading, and you have to buy some things, and you have to engage. But we can show you the door at least, and the rest is on you.
Love it. Anything to add, Shant?
No, it's exactly that, and it's really about. You don't need to force people to do anything. You can just encourage them to go and see a certain things in a certain way, and if they like it and that they will out of their own will sort of pursue it. And so it's better, like there's the theory of a carrot and a stick. I'm very much a carrot person, so that's all I can say.
It's an offer, and it's you decide what you want to do. Anyways, people never want to change in my experience. They only change if they want to change. You can't change a person. It's impossible. Best seen in relationships. So you just can say, listen, that's my offer, and you can take it or you can't. But if you don't, it's your decision.
So true. Well, this was incredibly insightful. Thank you for your time, Gerald, Shant. And I'm, from what I heard today, very bullish on this case and very excited to see what you guys make out of this and what we'll see unfold over the coming years. So now is the time to shill the project again, or shill yourself. I mean, Shant, I don't know, maybe you're just a ghost on Reddit somewhere. I don't know how else we can connect with you.
But on LinkedIn, I do have an account, but if I take a while to respond, you know why.
Yeah. We know why. Completely understand. He's busy building cool shit while we are all just scrolling through the newsfeed. Okay, what should we check out? How do we learn more about what you guys do? Where do we reach out? What's the CTA?
Sign on EtherMail, of course, with your wallet, because you're going to stay updated on everything what we're doing, because that's the way of communication for the future. And we look forward. And Marvin, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity. Great questions you have asked, also very insightful. The answerer always learns when he answers the question, actually. So thank you very much for those great questions and nudges in asking us to think a little bit further, actually.
It was a pleasure and a lot of fun. And I see you guys at the conference, or at least you, Gerald, Vetra Vision, September 21st, 22nd. And then hopefully also in Barcelona soon, which is where you guys are based.
Hopefully. Exactly, Marvin. Looking forward to having next year with you.
Yes.
Have a good one.
You too. GG. Bye, guys.
And thank you, everybody, on the show.